Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm going to be talking about WordPress as a development framework today. This is something that I've been thinking about for pretty much more than a year now. So for those of you who don't know who I am, most people know me online as Jefficus. I actually don't know where that came from. But so a bit of background to who I am, just to put things in context. I've been developing for WordPress since January 2007. I'm currently one of the lead developers at WooThemes.com, and we build premium themes, the occasional plugin here and there. And probably the most complex WordPress thing that I've done is building WooNav, and that's currently what you use in WordPress to manage your menus. My background is primarily in business analysis, web application development, and development standards and frameworks. So let's talk. What we're going to be talking about are development frameworks in general, what they are, what they offer, and then how that relates to WordPress, and in particular where plugins and themes fit into that. And then we're going to get dirty with some code examples. Hopefully it's not going to be too technical for you guys. But the main aim of this talk is to dispel the perception that WordPress is just a CMS or a blogging tool. It's actually more than that. I believe it's a fully fledged development framework, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll think the same thing. So why am I actually talking about this today at WordCamp? Most of us here are WordPress users, developers, designers, or consultants, and most of us build websites. But why just build websites? I mean, that can get pretty boring unless you've got interesting clients or unless you're doing something cool already. So what I want you to be able to do is use your existing WordPress skills to build complex web applications. Simple ones too, but eventually to get to the complex stage. So development frameworks. There's a couple of interesting ones out there. The most popular ones at the moment are based on a design pattern called MVC, Model View Controller. I'm not going to really go into that now, but basically the aim of that is to separate your views, which is what is actually rendered, from your logic and your database controllers. So in terms of PHP, which WordPress is built on, there's frameworks like CodeIgniter, CakePHP, and then there's Ruby on Rails. They all follow that MVC framework. And then there's a bunch of other custom ones out there which, from my point of view, if you don't have massive VC funding and you're going to build a custom framework, unless you really, really know what you're doing, it's not going to work out. And it's going to have lots of security flaws and bugs. But if you feel like you want to build it, go ahead. So what do they offer as a development framework? They offer a set of conventions for you to follow, both in terms of how your design pattern works, the structure, and in terms of coding standards. They offer rapid development, but some of them, they don't actually offer you rapid development because they just complicate life more than what you think. By following their conventions, you're actually bound by it. So there are some frameworks like Kahana, which is a lot more loose, and something like CakePHP, which allows you a lot more freedom to do your own thing, to write code in your way as opposed to the framework. And they offer you a base feature set, things like routing, caching. Some of them even offer you user management. So that begs the question, isn't that what WordPress already offers us? So WordPress. WordPress already offers us user management, login and registration. It already offers us a secure admin dashboard, a templating system, plugins and extensions for the core, and loads of other goodies such as hooks, filters, caching, and so much more. WordPress is actually a really, really solid framework. There was an attempt to extract that core feature set from WordPress, and that was called Backpress. And I'm just going to show you a little video now on a conversation between Mark Jackwith, one of the core developers, and Matt Mullenweg from WordCamp San Francisco. It's short, it's about 90 seconds. And they talk about the future for WordPress, ending its current arc of being a CMS. And yeah, let's see the video.
I think we're going to have to use your mic, if you don't mind. Matt, I'd like to know what you think about the future of WordPress as an application platform, not just a web publishing platform.
As an application platform, I think that the cool thing about WordPress, and I find this when I develop new things myself, is that it really provides sort of a base functionality, almost like frameworks endeavor to, but at a higher level. So you get a user system, you get a rewrite system, you get caching, you get sort of basic content types that can be represented. It almost becomes like a dial tone. Like whenever I start something new, I used to think of it, well, could we extract that out into a framework? We even had an effort there called Backpress I talked about a few years ago at WordCamp San Francisco. But then it completely shifted, where WordPress itself used to be what you embed into another website. Now WordPress is the entire website, and you embed everything else in there. That's the direction BBPress has gone, it's the direction all the e-commerce stuff has gone. That's how I think of things now. So as an application platform, it's really, I think, going to be the big trend. The CMS thing has kind of done its arc. Like basically everyone uses WordPress as a CMS now. So the next big trend is going to be things like app themes, applications built on top of WordPress. And I think probably themes are going to be the biggest distribution mechanism, and I'm excited to see what comes of it.
Okay, so I've given you a couple of reasons. So why use WordPress on top of that? I'm just going to show you some examples of existing complex WordPress applications or products in terms of plugins and themes. So some real-world examples close to home for me would be some of the themes from WooThemes, SupportPress and FaultPress. Now, those are support ticketing themes where you install those, and it basically transforms WordPress into a support system. You can use BBPress as well as a separate application. FaultPress, which is a bug tracker. And then there's Estate, which basically, if you want to run an agency listing website to list properties, you just install the theme, and it gives you a core set of functions, which gives you your property website. And that's all using core WordPress functions. Some other ones were the listings theme, directory listings, the Woo Tumblr plugin. That gives you a conversion for WordPress to make it function like Tumblr. So you can have the best of WordPress, but also have Tumblr functionality. There's Obox Mobile, again giving you the mobile feature set. And one from App Themes, Job Roller. That gives you a fully functioning job board instead of your default WordPress functionality. So that's just showing you that WordPress can be extended beyond its existing state. So getting down to the nitty-gritty. I'm going to take you through a couple of core areas which I think are important when considering to use WordPress as a development framework. There are multi-site caching, error logging, APIs, which I believe is very important for anyone building an application, and modifying the backend. Byron Road showed you some really cool stuff earlier, which I was quite glad, so I don't have to go through, in terms of modifying the backend. I'm going to be focusing on, if you're going to build your app, you don't want people to know it's WordPress. You just want to use WordPress's feature set, so you're never really going to need the admin dashboard. So, multi-site. As Ashley was saying, multi-site's really cool. It should be considered when building an application for a couple of reasons. I believe you can use multi-site to segment your user base if you really want to. Let's say you've got a bunch of users in the UK and a bunch of users in America. And let's say you want to offer them slightly different features. You could then use multi-site, have one main site, have the same data, have the same user login, everything. And once the user's logged in, determine what type of user they are, and then just send them to two different sites. You could then just have two child themes with slightly different features on. And that's a way you could use multi-site. The other thing, my personal favorite is to use it as an instance creator. Sites like Twitter, sites like Facebook, they offer you a vanity URL. So with multi-site, what happens is once you've installed WordPress, set it up as multi-site, and you create a sub-site. That then gives you, let's say, use my domain as an example, jefficus.com. Let's say I set up multi-site, and I allowed users to register for their own account on there, and I was using multi-site. Then let's say Maddie comes and registers, and he wants Maddie as his account. Then he would then get his own personal vanity site on jefficus.com/Maddie or on maddie.jefficus.com. Now, a lot of PHP frameworks don't allow that out the box, where WordPress actually does, and it's very easy to set up. So that's quite a game changer for me. Then caching. I think it was Nick said in the forum earlier that WordPress doesn't have caching out the box, but it actually does. It's not as complex as something like W3TC or Hypercache or Supercache, but you can set it up very, very easily. In your WP config file, you just got to define constant WP cache to be true. And then to use cache, it's also really, really simple to do basic things. There's a function, WP cache get, and another function, WP cache set. To use this, all you do is you check using WP cache get if the cache is there. If it isn't, then go in, do your function. In this case, I'm using a database query get result, and then I set the cache. Now, the next time that function runs, it's going to go check result. Is it there? Yes. OK, I don't need to do that. Then there's the cheap and easy way of using cache, using the transients API. There's also just two functions, set the transient, get the transient. This one works on expiry times, so you can actually customize how long a cached item is there for. WordPress also has error logging. Not many people actually know this, but you can, in WP config, again, you can just 3 lines, and there's your error logging setup. You can even define where the error log file is. And then if you've got any errors on your site, you can, and you're wondering what the heck's going on, just go into the error log and you'll be able to see. It's very basic. You can extend this, but I'm just showing you so you can get started. My personal favorites, APIs. This is something I've been delving into recently, in particular the XML-RPC. It's really, really powerful, and not many people know how to use it. So what I'm going to do, I've implemented both. I'm going to show you an example of XML-RPC, of how to implement this. So the scenario here is you've got your website or your application on your domain. And what you want to be able to do is allow other applications, both websites and applications like an iPhone application, to query your site and get information from it, both to and from. So on your web, we're working now on your application site. In your WordPress functions.php, you would use add filter XML-RPC methods. That's the hook that you would need. What that does is it goes and filters on the XML-RPC methods already existing in WordPress, and it adds your function to it. Now, I've done a little bit more advanced there, but basically where there's that blue little variable on the right, you would put your function name. So in my case, I've got a function called Appify XML-RPC method loader. There's a variable called methods. Now, inside methods, it's an array, and you specify a key there. In this case, I've specified it as wp.getAppTasks. That's very important. That's the name that external applications, that's the function that they will try and query your application with. So what I've done there is I've specified the function that's going to run the output. And in this case, it's appify_getAppTasks. And then I just return the methods, and that's how you filter the existing WordPress methods. Then this is the function that actually does the work. This was the appify_getAppTasks function, which I specified in the previous slide. And in here, there's a bunch of items you can use. There's a global for the actual XML-RPC server, which handles all the queries to your application. In here, you can do neat little things like you can check if they have access. You can either make it public, which allows anyone to query it, or if you see there where it says login, username, password, if a user doesn't have the right credentials, you can't actually do anything in your site. And here I just do a basic get posts and return some results. I'll show you a working example of this later on. Then, say for example you've got your site and then you've got another site. All they have to do then, if it's a WordPress site, it's very easy for them. WordPress provides you with the IXR class. You just include that and create a new IXR client. And in this example, I've got WordCamp.localhost. That's on my local machine. You just query that site, and you can see there I say client query that original method that I named, and then I give it a bunch of parameters, and that'll return results. You can do in, let me go back. A really good example of this as well is in our Tumblr plugin. What that does is, in there's a filter on the XML-RPC methods, and that allows our iPhone application to actually query the plugin from a device like an iPhone, which is pretty cool. And that allows you to create a multitude of functions for your users. I mean, you could then create things like, Twitter, which allows you to return your statuses to a website, or Facebook, which allows you to get your statuses or submit your statuses. So modifying the backend, as Byron actually showed earlier, CSS is the most obvious way to do it, but as he mentioned, it's not the most ideal because you're going to be modifying it for yourself. You can do stuff like add or removing menu items. He showed you one way how to do it, where you unset the variables. There's another way I'm going to show you now. And you can customize the dashboard using custom post types and custom right panels. And that's probably my favorite way of doing it if you're going to do it. So, like I said, Byron showed you one way. The other way is there's a couple of built-in functions. One way of adding menu, you just go add menu page, and there's a bunch of arguments. It's all on the WordPress codex. I'm not going to go too much into that. You can add submenus. And then you can remove menus in a really simple way. There's a remove menu page function and a remove submenu page function. And then you just specify which one. There's also a list of this. I think it's on the codex page. If not, just my details at the end, and then just mail me and I'll send it to you. So what's the trade-off between WordPress and a development framework? WordPress has its limitations. As Ashley showed, if you're going to have a lot of users, you're going to need to really consider this upfront in terms of scaling. It's user-based limitations. I mean, when you have something like WordPress.com and you've got 100,000 tables, you're going to have a problem. As with any development framework, you're stuck with the confines of the framework. WordPress, if you want to extend it, you either do it through your theme or your plugin. If you're going to start hacking the core, you're going to break it. I can promise you that much. It's a very loose structure as well. This is the thing that disappoints me most about the current WordPress development environment. I come from a ASP.NET background and a C++ background, so I'm used to structured code. And what really annoys me is when you have themes and plugins where it's basically just like a mess of code. I mean, something like a plugin, if you're going to have one file with a myriad of stuff in, segment it out into proper classes where you've got helper functions and you've got things structured in, like, things relating to proper sections. So if you've got a custom post type with custom filters and stuff like that, pop it in a class with the custom filters in the same class. Just structure your code really well so that other guys can understand it. So I said a real example. I took a bit of WordPress. I took an existing theme and I had a little bit of custom code. And what I came up with was a simple to-do application. Basically what it allows you to do is register, log in, have a dashboard, not using the WordPress admin panel, completely taking that out of the picture. So people won't even know that it's WordPress. You use a profile, and the actual functional element of the application is adding and editing tasks. So I'm going to show you what it actually looks like. It's very pretty. Okay. Okay, so I've built this on my local host. So if anyone's seen the Woo theme called Caboodle, this is what it looks like. It's got all the normal WordPress elements, blog, slider, usual kind of thing. Now I've written a class which appifies the theme. I've just included this in my functions.php. And what it allows me to do is register for an account, log in, and have the dashboard. So if I go and log in here, that's just using the getGravatar function built into WordPress. This is a WordPress page. Now I've written my own routing functionality to go and get my own template for the dashboard. And on here, here's using user information, the display name, and this is a custom post type. So this line item here is a post of my post type called task. And the status column is using a custom taxonomy to manage and track the actual status of the task. So if I wanted to add a new task, this is using the custom post types archive page, just with, again, very simple, my own routing. So let's add a task here called present the talk. I just add the task, and there it is. And this is using built-in to the theme styling. I haven't added any CSS to this. I've just used built into the theme, which is a sign of a great quality theme. I mean, I'm a little biased there, but the really nice thing about this is this section here is using custom post types. Now, that uses built-in WordPress queries. And what's really cool about that is you can use filters on that. So in this example, I've got multiple users. And all I've done is I've added a filter on the custom post types archive page to filter by author. So I don't need to write multiple things for multiple user types and all that stuff. I just filter by which user is it. And then I bring back his posts. And that's using built-in WordPress functionality. The other nice thing is if you're using things like custom post types to separate things, in here I've got again using WordPress hooks and functions, I've got a link to a taxonomy archive page. So let's say I wanted to just see the in-progress tasks. I can go to status is my taxonomy. I can go to that particular term's archive page, and there we go. And that's not a lot of markup. I'm going to show you the actual code now, how to do that. And it's really simple. And I mean, to build something like that, it wasn't long. I mean, I built my base framework in an evening, about 4 hours, and then another evening just to do that. So that's 8 hours worth of work, and it's not that hard.
When do you sleep?
So where am I? Okay, so I said I wrote a class. So this is my functions.php file. All I did was I added some, I'm programmatically generating some pages. I've created a bunch of user roles. I've created some menu items, and I've added my XML-RPC functions. And then I've got a class which does that all for me, and I just pass through all that data. So WordPress has, as I said, hooks and filters, and actions. What I used here was I used template include. That one's what I used to do my custom routing. I'll show you that code now. Then I used show admin bar. WordPress added, as I think it was the last release, that when you logged in, it has that admin bar across the top of the front end, which allows you to switch between dashboard tasks. I removed that here with one line. And then I don't want to allow anyone to go into the admin dashboard. So on admin init, I am going to redirect the users back to the front end. So template include, what I did here was template include returns a variable called template. And all that template is it's a location of the actual physical file that's going to render the code. So what I did here was I've got 3 conditions. I've got an array of my public pages and my private pages, what I want the user to see. And I've defined that for my application. Anything outside of that will render as a normal WordPress page, or it'll redirect the user and say, 404, I'm sorry, you're trying to access something that doesn't exist. So I use get template directory, and I pass which page they're trying to get there, and I do a check on if it's the post type archive, if it's a taxonomy, and there I reroute it from using the normal WordPress template hierarchy. The reason I did that was because I wanted to use the built-in WordPress routing, but I wanted to render it slightly different without having to edit the theme file. So if ever I decide to change my theme, all I've got to do is copy the functions.php file out, my Appify folder, pop that in a new theme, and take my little chunk of code and pop it in functions.php of my new theme. And there we go. I might have to do a bit of styling changes, but my functionality is still there. So yeah, like I was saying earlier with the filtering by user, I just added a pre-get posts filter, and then I set the author using the global current user and their ID, and then it uses the WordPress query and it filters it. Useful things when go back. When building applications and when building themes and plugins are knowing what globals are available to you. Instead of going and actually getting the user object, you've got a global current user, which is very handy when you're building applications, especially ones where you've got logged in users. It's got all the user information available to you. You've got first name, display name, user login, email, all that kind of stuff. So here it's just an example of if the display names, if the first name's set, use the display name. Otherwise, show their first name and last name. Creating a task. Again, I'm just using WordPress functions, WP insert post, to insert a post. The only thing different that I've done here is set the post type to be task. That's about as complex as it gets. WP set post terms, there's setting the default taxonomy for this one, and task status was the name of my taxonomy. Custom taxonomies, to output that link, I just used get the terms. It's sort of around here. And again, it's just using standard WordPress query object to get the tasks. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Custom post types and taxonomies are awesome. Since they've been in, you can do really amazing stuff with it. You can really extend WordPress far beyond what it was capable of. Custom roles and capabilities have really set the bar in terms of how far you can push it with membership. I mean, you can make, using capabilities, you can add your own sort of, what's the word? Your own rules of who accesses what. The WPDB class, it's there, use it. It's got really good documentation in terms of how to do custom queries for databases and how to stop people from using things like SQL injection and stopping your site getting hacked, which is really important. There's a myriad of APIs. I've only touched on the transients API, but it's, just talked to Maddie about it. He loves it. But it's really useful. There's widgets API, settings, meta, options. There's even the upgrade API, which I haven't even looked at. So you could write a custom upgrade script. You can white brand the admin. There are plugins to do that. I don't recommend using them. I do, however, recommend looking at them and seeing how they do that. Yeah, and there's within WordPress, there's a bunch of classes for things like users, which are really useful. And I just want to encourage you guys, if you think that you don't know what's going on in WordPress, go and look in the core. Go and look in the WP includes folder and actually read some of that code. Like start with maybe the post.php file and see how that's structured, see how that interacts with other functions so that you get an understanding of, okay, well, I know how WordPress posts work. Now I know how the code works. Okay, now I can extend it. Most of what I've learned in terms of WordPress is actually spending time in the core. Yeah. Hope you're convinced. There's one more thing I want to show you in the app, which I thought was cool. I talked about XML-RPC and normal APIs. And I said I did an example of both. So I've created an API page, which that's just the default. But I've created it so that it can accept a bunch of arguments. So I've got a key, which you could generate for your users, like an API key, an action variable, some parameters, and an output format. So here I want, let's say, I want to provide the user with XML output. So I go there, and there's XML output. And simply by changing the format variable, there we can get JSON format. Then on the flip side, on the XML-RPC side, this is another site on my local host. So now this one's querying WordCamp.localhost. Have I taken that out? Yeah. Now this one's query is invalid, but that's where it's querying the API. I don't know why it's not working, but yeah. I think, yeah, that's it.